Hi, hello everyone. I hope that my voice is clear enough for you to hear. Okay, so I think without further ado, we can just officially start this event by greeting you all first. Good morning from Jakarta and also Bangkok, everyone. How are you all? I hope things are well for each and every one of you as we will discuss deeper and broaden our knowledge in regards to not only the issue of Myanmar crisis itself, but also its coup impact to youth in Myanmar. So maybe as seen in the poster before I start this discussion entitled Myanmar's Youth After Coup, a primer. And it's basically a dissemination of a research where the research itself is aimed for two things. First, to inform the situation of the Myanmar after the military coup and its impact to youth. And the second of all is as a reference to stakeholders in considering its support and assistance to Myanmar crisis, especially to the youth. So we will get in touch with our speakers as well as our ASEAN Youth Forum representative and the researcher himself to highlight several points of the research. Another triggering point which we can absorb together is that on the 3rd of July 2023, a meeting between 26 Myanmar Springs youth revolutionaries with the head of His Excellency, the head of Special Envoy of Myanmar, Muras Wajaya, where youth were sent out their regards of ASEAN's ineffectiveness to stop the Myanmar conflict, including its 5-point consensus. And also there has been updates on the ground, especially when it comes to airstrike incidents and many more, what has been in touch and happening in Myanmar. And they even pointed out their very own, not the 5-point consensus, but the 5-point political roadmap for a new federal democratic Myanmar and their recommendations to ASEAN. By giving out those fresh, innovative, burning ideas are very much the whole idea of youth's vital role in the crisis. So the burning question from that burning statement is that what will happen if youth were to be severely impacted to this ongoing crisis? What will be the impact to their sheer will to protect the people's rights from Burma, Myanmar? Therefore, let us see through the process of this discussion by our speakers and also researcher. And by that, allow me to share my screen in order to represent what will we discuss in today's event. Great. All right, but before we officially start our discussion, I would like to request to all of the participants here to scan the barcode, which is shared in the screen for your attendance list. Okay, so there is a little bit technical issue here. Okay, there we go. Yes, you may scan the barcode here, which I will share later on during the process of our event, but you may scan it right now for further purposes. And aside from this attendance list, I would like to inform two more things before we head on to our event. First, we have these 5 simple house rules in order for the event to happen. First is to respect all speakers and also participants by promoting inclusive, and I mean inclusive, and non-violence and do no harm principles. The second is to respect the schedule that we have held for this event. Third is to mute your microphone when you're not speaking. You will have your question and answer later on. And to raise your hand before speaking in the Q&A session. You may also write your question in the chat box as I will read it in the later on during the specific session for the Q&A. And there will also be a specific Google Docs, which I will then later on allow for the participants to then give their questions And also there is this thing called the unacceptable behavior that will not allow in this event. First, sexist, racist, ageist, homophobic, transphobic, ableist, religiously insensitive, or inclusionary jokes are definitely not allowed during this event. Abusive, insulting, offensive, or degrading language is also very much not allowed during this event. Any language that encourages harassment or hate speech or harmfully reinforces systems of oppression, we're not allowed to do that. Unwelcome photography, recording, or screenshooting, this might be highlighted. So if you would like to take screenshots or recordings, permissions from those involved should be received first during this event. You may later on maybe chat the secretariat through the chat box or the committees involved in this event. And then deliberate intimidation or online stalking is not allowed. Unwelcome chatting, violence or threats of physical violence, and last but not least, sexual attention or advances of any kind. So, without further ado, we would like to officially start our event by letting out the opening remarks from the regional coordinator of the ASEAN Youth Forum, Ms. Fatima Zahra. Ms. Fatima Zahra, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Nadine. Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. First and foremost, I would like to extend my gratitude for Myanmar youth fellows who have shared their stories and experiences to this research. We understand that it's not easy to share the traumas while the crisis is still happening. And also for the researcher, Rian, and everyone who has been working very hard for the past 3 months to make this research possible. And also, of course, for everyone who has joining us in this launching, welcome and thank you very much. We know that the Myanmar coup and the crisis because of the coup in Myanmar, as Nadine mentioned, has been happening for more than 2 years. And in the broader context, many reports found that there is this rising of anti-democracy and in some cases authoritarianism in this region. But at the same time, the pro-democracy protests against the authority led by the young people have also upseen in the recent years. However, we are also concerned by the security and the impact of the government repression towards these youth protesters. And moreover, we are facing one of the most concerning humanitarian crises in this region because of the turn of authoritarianism, which is the return of military dictatorship in Myanmar. And we believe that in time of crisis, building solidarity effort is needed more than ever, including the cross-national solidarity. We also believe that the cross-national solidarity effort not only needed to earn more support in strengthening youth in Myanmar, but also to flourish the activism dynamic in other countries. We believe that this cross-national solidarity will also provide beneficial strengthening to the activism dynamic in other countries outside Myanmar. And as youth-led organization focusing on advocacy effort, we also believe that the importance of data-driven advocacy in building our solidarity works. Thus, we are developing this research to better comprehend the coup impact on young people's lives in Myanmar. And also, we envision that this primer could serve as a references to consider what kind of the solidarity support that we can build for youth, for the youth in Myanmar. Last but not least, we also very welcome and very looking forward for input, insight, and collaboration to strengthen the advocacy effort of this finding of this report, and also to start mainstreaming the conversation of the condition of youth fellow in Myanmar in general. So please feel free to to reach to us to provide input and insight on how we can strengthen the advocacy of this report. And Again, thank you very much, and we hope that you enjoy the discussion today. Thank you, Nadine. Over to you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Fatima Zahra, for
Okay, everyone. I think Nadine connection is on trouble. So yeah, we can move to the next agenda. Thank you so much, Fatima, for the opening remarks. We can start with the Rian Febrianto as a main researcher in this research to present the findings later on. But first, I would like to have Alia Almas as a IAF representative to announce or to describe general background of IAF work on Myanmar and why we conduct this research. For Alia, the place is yours.
Okay, thank you so much, Ajit, and thank you so much, Nadine, for the chance for me this morning. Good morning, everyone. I would like to say thank you for you guys to participate in this morning event. Before I start my presentation, I would like to share my screen first. Okay, have you guys seen my screen? Or
yes, it is visible.
yeah. All right. So I hope that my presentation can be more concise so that we can have more discussion later on. So here I'm Alia Halmas as the AYF representative and at the moment working as the advocacy officer. And for this morning presentation, I want to focus more on why AYF conducting this research and why this research is important in highlighting the Myanmar issues and especially how AYF the youth movement can be able to advocate and can be a platform for youth in voicing their concern, especially the military crisis. Now for this agenda, they to divide it into four. And the first is like what Myanmar, I mean like why Myanmar issues, like why Myanmar crisis need to be highlighted. And the second one is that the urgency of this research. It's more like to I would like to explain more about why this research is important and how can this research can be a platform for youth. And the third is like the recommendation, and the last one is like the Myanmar youth hope. So it's just like trying to highlight it like a little bit what the actually the Myanmar youth wants and what kind of the platform that they wish to us and what kind of the aspiration that they would like to always bring to the ground. So either to stakeholders, to international community, or us as the NGOs. Okay, first is that why Myanmar? Because we believe that since after 2 years of Coup started at February 2021, and right now we have come to the first semester of 2023, and the situation has not been better. The situation has stay same, and then the struggle of our Myanmar families are still there and still very real. So that we hope that AYF as youth movement can be the strong reminder that nothing has changed after more than 2 years since the military coup started. And that's why we would like to bring like this sort of solidarity movement of for our family from Myanmar, because that as a regional movement, we believe that we need to highlight it. The Myanmar issue is certainly something that we need to highlight and always brought up to the floor. And as we can see that since the civil disobedience movement, youth has always become the frontliner of the movement, the frontliner of the protest against the Myanmar military, and they're all more like, you know, vulnerable in many aspects, like vulnerable in terms of arbitrary arrest, prone to prosecution, and then like their basic rights of civic and political rights has been ripped, has been ripped off, and many other aspects like education, housing, and employment, and has been neglected ever since then. So that is the reason why that this research is really important for us as the regional movement, because like we're trying to re-highlight it, like what kind of the voices that we have missed in this, what that we always miss, because that and I think that this is really important, because that for the youth, we hope that they're not only be able to voicing their concern, just going to the street and then we do the protest, but then like us as the movement, us as the organization, that be able to connect with youth to the stakeholders and many more. We'd like to bring like more platform to for them, and what kind of the real challenges that they wanted to do, and what kind of the hopes that they wanted to have, and also become the check and balances between the youth and the stakeholders, because that even though that many stakeholders are trying to raise up the concern towards the military crisis, they always but sometimes it can be really bureaucratic. The sometimes it's only highlighted the main things, and also the process of this negotiating things is like giving government to government. But then like in this way, why we providing you the platform, because there are more wider voices that we need to be heard, that our stakeholders need to be heard. So this is the reason why I would like to highlight the missing voice that has been, you know, always stayed outside of the circles of our policy process and also our policy making. So that is the reason why it can be check and balances between the youth and also stakeholders. Okay, so and also the urgency of this research, I have several highlights here, and the first is like to keep the lights of solidarity of the Myanmar crisis alive, because that it's been 2 years, and also we have so many issues, like for example the same military crisis that happened in Ukraine, or any other, you know, refugees issue or any other conflict issues that happen across the globe. But then like we need to see that even though there are so many things happen, what happened in Myanmar are still there, and it's still real. So this is the reason why even that it's been 2 years, but we need to know that our job has not finished. That our job, we cannot moving on from our Myanmar issues to another issues, because that we still need to finish our job here. And also we need to provide, again, that I want to mention that this is a good platform for you to raise their concern. And also the next one is that to raise the importance of counting the youth voices and action towards the policy process, and also the activism, and all, as well as including their voices into the political process. And also that to understanding what challenges the youth faces, and also what kind of life that they have been struggle as the impact of the coup, because that we cannot keep assuming things that what happened within youth, what kind of challenges they make, but we need to directly listen to their voices, what kind of the challenges, what kind of the things that they more struggle in this past 2 years. And the last but not least is that to providing the recommendation for stakeholder in handling the youth voices and addressing the crisis, because like we need to remember that we'll not be only to be counting the several groups, but we need to entirely counting the Myanmar voices and in this case is the youth voices. And move a little bit into the key challenges that they have been faced in this more than past 2 years based on our research. But the most important things that the youth faces is like the uncertainty. It's more like they have been losing several access, and they've been almost losing hope because like there are so many uncertainties that they have been faced for more than 2 years. Like for example, the first one is like the inability in accessing education because like there are so many schools has been closed, or like they're not guaranteed that the education process will be the same before the book happens. So there is the reason why that the education that giving them access to the lessons, to the character building, to the knowledge, and etc. has been bit off. So that is the reason why that in this case that the uncertainty of the future slightly bigger like than before. And the second one is like the losing the job opportunity, even like in country or like abroad, and also the losing of job market here because of the coup, they've been losing their access to education, and also that there are many things there are so many working job market has been closed, and also they face and many other things. So this is why that the chances on the job opportunities is likely become lesser and lesser by days. And the third one is like the inadequate health service or a provider because the civil disobedience movement and many other things that there are so many health services that has been closed and are being surveillance by the military junta. So that's why even though that health here is like the basic rights, that they get a big challenges in order to access them. And the fourth one is like the emerging housing problems, because like as we can see that based on the UNHCR report, that shows the military junta in 2021 not only make the country shock or like causing the protests across the countries, but also the emerging of the refugee issue and also the internal displacement that in the end of the day causing so many people, I mean here and also including youth, become more prone to the homeless, and in the end of the day become stateless and many other housing related problems. And the last one of this is like the lacking of security and protection, because as I mentioned before, the youth has been actively become the frontliner of the civil disobedience movement and become the frontliner of the activism against the military junta. But however, they've been lacking of security and protection, because that in the end of the day, the security operator here as the police and also the military has been the one who become the violator here. So and there's the reason why that during the activism they've been prone to prosecution and also arbitrary. So this is the reason why that they're trying to be doing pro democracy movement, but they still raise in terms of security and protection. So we believe that in this research trying to bring up a little more about this regards and be able to gain our support as international community and to giving them support and make them less prone to the security and protection issues. And this is like the last part of my presentation. This is like more what the youth that actually help, but one of the voices that may wish to be heard by our stakeholder is that the first is like disappointed but hopeful. And as we say, this is the role of ASEAN, but of course this is not limited to ASEAN as well, but I think it's also another international organization, for example, UN, for instance, that they hope that because that the ASEAN or UN, that they are the the unity of among governments to government. So the youth has been, even though they're disappointed, but they're trying to be more helpful. They're more hopeful that ASEAN and UN can be more proactive and can raise these issues a little bit more and be able to be a bridge of communication between to the junta in order to and be able to find a way in the most effective way in order to stop the prosecution and also to stop the coup, for instance. And also the second one is that the role of Indonesian government as a change person in 2023, because even though that we haven't seen the significant impact, Indonesia since the coup happened that has been actively condemned what junta has been done, also in 2023, Indonesia as the chair of ASEAN is expected to do more, to be more active, to be more engaged in terms of this in Myanmar issue, because of as the ASEAN chairmanship, Indonesia has like more higher legitimacy in order to negotiate the peacemaking that happen in Myanmar. And the third part is like the engagement and support and solidarity for international community. For example, us, because here we act as the international community here. We cannot get tired yet to our ultimating our voices towards the Myanmar crisis, because that our job has not finished. That we need to keep our solidarity alive, be it giving the humanitarian aid, or like giving the platform, or just like the youth activation of mobilization in raising the Myanmar voices, and all of those things that we can do, that we need to keep doing it for our family in Myanmar. And the last but not least is like the involvement of NGOs, or for example, be it giving the donors, humanitarian aid, or empower for it's likely lighter and better for our family in Myanmar. And I think that's conclude my presentation. I think we can discuss further about these matters, and I would like to give it back to the moderator. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Kak Alia, for your presentation. So several points can be highlighted from her previous presentation. Is that first, nothing has changed after 2 years since the military coup, and also more attacks that actually have been coming on, and also the denial actions are seen from the Junta military. And the second of all is that youth who are protesting and voicing out their rights are actually one of the vulnerable actors to be arrested for the arbitrary arrest conditions and also to violence. And we can see why this research has a big urgency to keep the lights of solidarity for the Myanmar crisis, especially youth, and to raise the importance of counting youth voices and actions as one of the main actors to advocate the Myanmar crisis. But it is also highlighted by the previous presentation that there are 3 key challenges. First, the inability for accessing education, losing job opportunities, and since they're, again mentioned before, they're one of the victims of violence. So, which is why we will need to hear more from our next speaker, who is actually the researcher for this research, Masrian Febrianto. We will now hear what can this research do to fill its gaps, and also several questions revolving around our head when it comes to overcoming the crisis itself and the impact to youth. And the floor is yours, Masrian.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you once again, especially to Alia, for summarizing all the key findings from the study. I think my job is done here. I'm kidding. But in this opportunity, first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Rian Febrianto, and here I am the lead researcher for this study. And in the next 10 until 14 minutes, I will briefly present the background, methodology, and also key findings of the study. And you will have the access to the report after the webinar. But before I begin, I would like to convey that this is a small and short study that was conducted amid methodological challenges, particularly related to limited access to available information and literature on the challenges of engaging Myanmar youth, and especially also regarding the safety and how to conduct a meaningful research involving young people, given the current situation. And also the report from this study does not also to attempt to provide comprehensive and in-depth information about the situation of young people in Myanmar. However, it is expected that this document can be a quick and concise reference regarding the general situation of young people in Myanmar, based on key literature as well as discussions and interviews with young people. And moreover, due to security considerations, this research was also conducted by a team from outside of Myanmar. So we do not really have first-hand information and experience of living in Myanmar. So it is hoped through this opportunity, through this webinar, that this report will trigger productive discussions, especially from young people living in Myanmar or observers of issues in Myanmar, as to enrich the research findings. Next, maybe I will give a little context, especially for those who are not familiar with the situation in Myanmar. Especially, I want to explain a little bit the context of the military coup that took place in Myanmar in 2021. According to several reports, on February 1st, 2021, Myanmar's military took power in the coup, abruptly stopping the country's aspiring transition to democracy. The military justified the coup by alleging widespread fraud in the 2020 general election, which was won in a landslide by Aung San Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy. The Myanmar people, in this regard, strongly rejected the coup and continued resisting the coup. And on the 2nd February 2021, health workers who were then at the forefront fighting the COVID-19 pandemic quit their positions, pioneered the new civil disobedience movement. And while many people protested, according to many reports, it was young people between 18 and 35 years old who took the lead and made up the majority of protest leaders. So in the weeks following the coup, large numbers of people took to the street in mass protest. The military responded with deadly violence and launched a terror campaign, raiding homes and arresting anyone suspected of supporting democracy, especially young people. Thousands of people since then have been arrested. Reports of torture in prison are also common. So unfortunately, in the midst of this crisis, so far there is not much literature, especially academic literature, that discusses the experience of young people navigating the life changes after the military coup in 2021. So this research was conducted to fill the information gap from ASEAN youth, especially Myanmar, for Myanmar youth. It is hoped that the information collected can be used by the international community, especially ASEAN, in planning and implementing concrete steps to the humanitarian human rights situation in Myanmar. So the research was also conducted using this theory of change. So if we, for example, identify what issues young people in Myanmar are concerned about, understand the daily changes that Myanmar's youth have experienced as a result of the 2021 military coup, and understand the voices and needs to promote well-being of Myanmar youth, we will then have additional and up-to-date information on the situation of young people in Myanmar. Second, if we understand the daily changes of youth have experienced as a result of 2001 military coup, we will then have a document that can serve as a reference to discuss next steps that can be taken as an international community. So to do this, we conducted a short qualitative study through several data collection methods or techniques. The first one is we conducted an FGD with 7 Myanmar youth, both female and male, aged 13 to 35 years old, residing in Myanmar and also outside of Myanmar, connected to the internet, and required those who speak good conversational English. In-depth interviews were also conducted with 3 young people to understand daily changes after the coup, and also to review the 15 literatures regarding youth in Myanmar. And also, I want to note the several resource limitations due to online data collection, security issues of Myanmar participants, researchers from outside of Myanmar, and also time and funding constraints. Yeah, so in this report, we will present you, in this report, as you can see in the document later on, you will see the research results are written in 4 sections or 4 parts, namely introduction, challenges, experiences, and also aspiration. But for this presentation, I will focus on explaining 3 things, especially the situation, life experiences, and aspirations of young people. And the first of all, in this section, I will present 5 issues that have been categorized based on the urgency and concerns of Myanmar youth. These issues include education, employment, health, housing, and also protection. So in regards to the first issues, education and employment, these 2 issues become 2 issues that young people are mostly concerned about, and these 2 issues are complex but also connected from one another. For example, according to young people, the military coup that led to the junta's occupation of Myanmar schools segregated the education system between junta-run and alternative schools operated by the NUG and community-based schools. And also for young people in secondary education, it creates a particular challenge for them to take, for example, matriculation exams, let alone continue their education to the university level. Young people also express the situation where many schools are now understaffed, leading to dropouts, and there has been also a significant drop in secondary school students registering for graduation exams. Many parents and students also feel unsafe attending junta-run or occupied schools. And another issue, according to an informant, is also regarding brain drain among students who choose to leave Myanmar for education purposes. And also, for example, many students were faced with scams from the countries and the institution they went for. An informant also mentioned that the ethnic minority groups are the most vulnerable groups regarding access to quality education. Young people, in regards to employment, complain that there are limited job opportunities for young people, as many companies or organizations have closed their operations from Myanmar following the military coup. And also in the midst of this crisis, many companies require a minimum of a high school or university education for job opportunities or job vacancies. This is difficult for young people, as many of them did not take graduation tests and did not continue their education to university. Next, regarding health, housing, and protection, young people also complain about Myanmar's challenging healthcare system in the context of handling COVID-19. For example, according to several informants, the junta began to politicize health services by spreading anti-vaccine propaganda to public. Young people also mentioned issues around attacks by the military on health services, including health workers. A report also wrote that the military also closed access to the supply of medicines and food to hospitals and areas as attempted to damage medicines and equipment in hospital. This made it difficult for young people to access health services in general. Some young people were also concerned about the situation of those who are left homeless by military operations and occupations. One informant, for example, mentioned there are at least millions of people who have been displaced by the conflict. Not only that, young people also complained about the restricted access to electricity and internet, as well as the rising prices due to inflation. This has an impact on the daily lives of the society, especially young people who work and who go to school online in the COVID-19 pandemic situation. On the issue regarding protection and security, young people were also concerned about the safety of digital spaces for young people and the protection of young people migrating abroad. It is not uncommon, for example, for young people to hear cases where the arrested party needs to pay a considerable amount of money to be exempted from arrest or spend time in prison. And as such, this creates fear and concern regarding the digital activities that young people can engage in. Security risks are also experienced by young people living abroad, especially for school or work. And also in the second, this chapter, we document 3 stories of young people affected by the military coup, and how the issues mentioned in the previous section are actually interconnected and have a real impact on young people's daily lives. These are stories from Myanmar youth, as you can read comprehensively in the report. Stories of Ted, Y, and Lin. These are not real names, obviously. The military coup in Myanmar left young people with limited options for the future, even needing to migrate to other countries to further their education and their careers. And the sudden change in social relationships and propaganda against young people from the Myanmar military's government has an impact on young people's mental health as well. On the other hand, amid young people's concerns for the future of Myanmar, young people also have a great fear of their activism, given the unsafe and narrowing space of civic participation. So first of all, the story of Ted, for example. Ted is a Myanmar student currently living in Hong Kong to pursue his undergraduate thesis studies. Before the military coup that took place in Myanmar, there was no thought of studying abroad. And Ted was an active student back then in high school, wanting to pass high school exams and continue to his undergraduate and postgraduate in Yangon, then work at a foreign embassy. That's his dream. But Ted had to bury his dream after the military coup, just like many young people in Myanmar. For some people, getting a degree abroad means also that someone has to choose a new, different path. This is happening to all young people in Myanmar who considered migrating to another country. And according to him, young people in Myanmar face tremendous challenges when continuing their education abroad. Not only it was difficult, for example, to graduate from high school during the coup, but access to study abroad and take SATs, for example, in Myanmar was difficult. Obtaining passport processing is also a challenge. In fact, according to him, only upper middle class can get access to further education abroad. Second, why she is a Myanmar student currently studying in Thailand. For her, the military coup has had a huge impact on mental health for herself and also for young people around her. Realizing this, Wai initiated a project to provide a mental health support or services for young people in crisis areas. The military coup did not only have an economic impact on those affected, but also on mental health, particularly stress and depression among young people. This is closely related to the daily lives of young people due to changes, for example, in Myanmar's education system and fear of security. And moreover, this is exacerbated by the changes in social relations, as many wives, friends, relatives have different political ideologies from her, specifically supporting the military government. And the last story here is the story of Luin. He is a young activist with a background in legal studies who actively promotes justice for vulnerable groups through legal aid and alternative education. Currently, he is busy completing his thesis while continuing to equip himself with information related to the political and also human rights situation in Myanmar. And in the midst of various issues that occur in Myanmar, especially limited access to quality education, to the difficulty of fulfilling basic needs such as electricity, internet, he has also concerns for regarding the protection of young people who are active in voicing democracy. And according to his opinions and experiences, the future is actually uncertain after the military coup. He had witnessed a lot of protests and spring revolution, but according to him, he feels that none of it brings any significant results. It is due to the power of the Myanmar military group, a huge power and their responses to arrest, torture, and also murdered young activists. And because of this situation, young people live in fear of investigation, hacking, repression, and murder by military groups. Restraining is widely practiced through monitoring activities, through CCTV, for example, hacking social media accounts and activists being accounts even, And many young activists then choose to hide in rural areas, for example, and live in fear and concerning conditions. So these are examples from the stories of the Myanmar youth, which you can read comprehensively in the report. And the next is regarding the aspirations. We identified some of the aspirations and hopes of young people to promote youth welfare or democratization in Myanmar. In general, these complex issues that are happening in Myanmar are actually difficult to address by civil society alone and require better support from the international community, particularly UN, ASEAN, and also the role of neighboring countries and international humanitarian organizations. As mentioned by Aliyah before, the young people involved in the study expressed disappointment with the role of the international community, particularly the UN and ASEAN, in promoting democratization in Myanmar, and even the provision of essential humanitarian support to vulnerable communities. Despite the 5-point consensus agreed by ASEAN, young people complained about the lack of meaningful change, especially pressure on Myanmar's military government. Given the role and the success of the Indonesian government here in international advocacy and in diplomacy, young people in Myanmar also expect Indonesia's leadership in discussing and seeking resolution that would be in favor of addressing the humanitarian crisis. Especially the urgency is the provision of basic services in humanitarian settings, and in the long term to support or promote the democratization process in Myanmar. And third, regarding the role of the international communities, young people demand the international community to play a role in several ways, most particularly regarding providing financial and also infrastructural facilities and support to grassroots organizations, especially youth organizations or communities. In particular, young people also ask funding that is expected to be more flexible and can be used according to the context of need. And it also requires the simplification of the requirements, for example, to getting donors, disbursement, and also reporting of funding to the recipient organizations or communities. Young people also demand the provision of health services, especially mental health for young people. And throughout these recommendations offered or expressed by young people, based on these findings, while there is no official and easy way to protect and support the youths leading social movements in Myanmar, one option, according to young people, according to this report, is actually to find ways to give assistance directly to those who are inside the country, particularly regarding education and also job opportunities. And in the long term, there should be a space and platforms that youths can actually use to raise their voices. And most of the participants in the study also stress that further education reform is also still needed in Myanmar. So yeah, these are the key results from this study, and we look forward to the discussion regarding the findings. And again, I would like to mention that this is a quick and easy reference. This is not aimed to provide comprehensive situation regarding young people in Myanmar. So the discussion afterward will be crucial as for us to enrich the research results. So thank you, and back to the moderator.
Right. Thank you very much, Mas Rian, for your presentation. Now we know several methodologies were used. For example, by using the theory of change as one of the interesting theories to use in this research, so we can understand how has the 2021 military coup affected the lives of the Myanmar youth through qualitative study, if I'm not mistaken, such as FGDs, in-depth interviews, and also review literatures. And we can infer that from this research, from this primary research, there has been 5 main challenges for the youth. education, they were dropouts, and also have a hard and tricky decision to study abroad, employment also, job opportunities and its relevance to poverty and also migrant issues. We have also health sector, the attacks of health services, and also the mental health as one of the key challenges inside housing, a homeless society, homeless issues, security and protection such as violence. And we can infer from those 5 main challenges to one sentence, which was actually included in the presentation said by youth themselves, that the future of Myanmar is pretty much uncertain. So which is why youth are pessimistic but hopeful at the same time. And we can also infer from Mas Rian's presentation that this is still very much open to discussion. So we are still gathering more data in order to enrich this research. So thank you very much, Mas Rian. And I would like to reshare my screen again. So after this, we will actually have a discussion of insights with 3 of our speakers. But before that, I think we should have a small or short break. So for participants who would like to have a cup of tea or coffee by their side while waiting for the next discussion point, please do. We have 10 minutes for the short break. While being inside the short break, I would like to remind and also the actually the communities have also
Okay, everyone. I think we lose Nadine again. So it's time to have a short break. If you want to go to the toilet or have a cup of tea, just please. And we would like to also remind you about to fill attendance links that we will share in the barcode. Let me share you this one. Just fill out the attendance list by scanning the barcode, and we'll see you in 5 minutes again.
1, 2, 3, 6.
Hello, welcome back. Okay, so seeing that there are several new participants here, hi, welcome all. And I think I would like to reshare my screen since it wasn't shared before due to my network. Okay, hold on. Let me share one specific screen, three actually. So first again, as already been mentioned in the chat box by our committees, that the participants are very much allowed to scan the barcode in this screen for your attendance list. That's first. The second one is that I would like to reshare again. The house rules, the 5 most simple house rules: to respect all speakers, to respect the schedule, please to mute your microphone when you're not speaking, to raise your hand before speaking in the Q&A session, which we will have later on. And also to write the question in the chat box as I will read in the Q&A session.
Okay, okay, everyone. So if you have any question or respond to the research funding, please just fill in chat box. And if you want to deliver it directly, just please raise your hand in the Q&A session. But before we go to the Q&A session, I would like to hear friends of mine who have experience and works on human rights, and also one of my friends that involved in the FGD and data collection in this research, would like to please a representative from youth in Myanmar to share their insight and their perspective about the research and the current situation occurred in Myanmar. So for Francis, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, AYF, for the opportunity today. And it's actually it's a huge honor and actually a very, very big pressure for me to speak today, because I'm speaking independently for myself, but also for other young people from Myanmar who are sharing similar experiences or worse experiences than me, which the AYF team has expressed through their presentation in the earlier session. So I really want to try to convey the significance and what we're going through right now as young people from Burma for today. So I think the technical and the factual discussions are made by the presentation earlier on, and I think everyone can read a very well written, very intensive research report in the research itself when it is published. So I think I just want to put in a little bit more personal touch on the report, because I often feel like Myanmar is rather a bit forgotten these days, even in the world, and even among ourselves. I think sometimes even myself feel like there's so many troubles and problems in the world. Why is Myanmar, or why am I, why am I to think that I'm in a bigger trouble than others, right? Like we have Ukraine and other problems and so on. And I think this is like the biggest thing I really want to address today. Like, why is Myanmar and Myanmar's youth needing special attention amidst of all our global and regional problems? And I think this is a question like we all should ask ourselves, even among Myanmar youth ourselves, because Myanmar youth, we have been working really so hard to keep ourselves on track and keep our lives going on. So to describe, I think what makes Myanmar problem and Myanmar youth's problem so devastating or so special is that it really, one moment or one night changed our whole lives forever. It's just you slept like I did and everyone in Burma did for that night, and when we woke up, our lives were just shuffled and plunged into into a very random chaos. And before that night, we were all on the track of our lives, and we are all working on our lives. And we all had dreams, and we all had plans going, short term, long term, 5 year, 10 years. Everyone was doing quite well on their own. We had problems, but we were already working on it. And I was born during the General Tantri's period. I'm even I am relatively young, and I had a chance to catch up that period, and then President Thein Sein, first civilian period, and then the NLD period. So I had my fair share of deprivation. So I remember that when I was in my early childhood, and in my childhood, I remember that we had to line up to top up our SIM cards, because the government control the SIM card number of SIM cards, and the government control the internet. We don't have internet at home. We need to go to an internet cafe, or we need to go through everything. If someone's sleeping over at our house, we need to go to the township, the junta office to report who's sleeping at home. Or if not, not just if not, and regularly the junta officials will come and check our homes in the middle of the night to see if there's a stranger or unreported person sleeping with us. And I also remember there was a bomb, just nearby our home. I think we were almost going into that place, and then suddenly there was a bomb, so we left back. No electricity. I spent most of my school study period with a candle. So this was not that far in my life, just my childhood, and not very far from my parents and my grandparents and older generations too. But what the difference was that as time passed by, and the President Thein Sein and the NLD come in, and as I grew older, I think I was really lucky, along with other young people, we started to go in a direction that we started to fix that deprivation. Everyone started to, not just the government, also the people, the young people, the people from abroad, helping us, organizations, INGOs, everyone's coming back. Like we had some new neighbors in my NLD years, that they just came back from the US after all the years they left Burma. So everyone was really hopeful, and the ASEAN and Burma was doing a lot of collaborations for young people in Myanmar. A lot of programs. It was golden times, and yes, I think that was the biggest difference between young people in this generation and the older people in the earlier generations, because this is the first time, I think, after many years, we started to see more prosperity, more liberty, and more growth, and more freedom, and more development. We were going into a completely we're going in that direction. And then suddenly, after that night, we just plunged back to the deprivation that we probably experienced, that we thought that most of us have forgotten, that that's something that would never come back. And now today, a lot of young people and a lot of people in Burma are going back to the situation that I described, or that earlier on, that I experienced in my early childhood years. And I would like to bring your attention to that, because I think, as I said, we had a lot of development going on along with the region, along with the world. Right now in the world, or in ASEAN, or even in your personal lives, even this event today, we are talking as if we want to solve the problem. We are thinking about how to solve the problem, how to help with the problem. And Burma is just going into, going back and, digging up more problems. I think as a region, this is very concerning, and I think it's very embarrassing. Like, everyone's trying to solve the problem, and Burma is just going back so far that more and more problem rises every day. Burma becomes the source of problems, not just a source of problem. And I think this should be something we need to remember because we today, most of our discussion is how to solve the problem, and we are just seeing more and more problems from Burma every day. And I think this is a huge indicator of how serious this is as a region. So even for me, someone living abroad, it has been very hard, as the research representation went, mental health, passport persecution. And to be really honest, passport persecution was the one of the biggest things that made me talk anonymous today, because I can't really escape my embassy if I openly participated, in a public discussion with the NUG. So we young people from Burma, living in the country or abroad, just as the people of Burma, face a lot of problems and persecution from every possible way, and we need a lot of help, basically. And I hope this research can describe what we're going through. So the program, today's event, give me 3 guidelines. So the first is to describe my problem, and the second is which kept me going. And to be really honest, usually it's survival instincts for me. I don't know for other people. Survival instinct, as in, like, I need to keep going. I need to look after my family and stuff. But I know that other friends of mine who are much more passionate and who are much more, yes, passionate would be the right word. Like, I know that my friends in first-hand experience, like, we would have this clicking app in Burma to find funds for the NUG and the PDFs. So he will click that every single hour he has in the day. Except he has classes in our university, while he was eating or resting or going on a bus or traveling, he will click it. And this is not just him, along with millions of people in Burma who are doing that right now. So we are all trying our best to keep going on. I think the biggest motivation that kept us going on is that this is the lowest we can go, and I think everyone's really hopeful to come back up. I think there is a very famous saying that was becoming very popular. I think it was originally from the Communist Manifesto or something like that. I think we have nothing to lose but chains. So I think that is a general motivation to all of us to keep going, despite all the hardship, and to keep working for a better future. Because I think after everything that happened, I think everyone is really determined and aware of the kind of future they all want, which is to have freedom and liberty and equality in all our lives. So by saying that, I think the last thing to me to say is what should ASEAN do, or what should the ASEAN community or similarly international community should do, in my opinion, is that I think recognition will be the most important, because so far everyone has been doing everything, ASEAN community, international community, a lot of things has been doing, which becomes like a problem. They have been doing a lot of things and they've been issuing a lot of statements, but the recognition part becomes quite necessary if you all are aware of the situation, because somehow the international community would somehow avoid certain topics and certain areas, and that this becomes quite crucial in the help you would deliver. So I would suggest that the biggest thing, the most helpful thing you can do is to recognize that what is happening in Burma is not normal, because we have a lot of problems in today in the world, as I said, and we start to think that, oh, it's quite normal to have this problem. It's quite normal to have talk about this. uh you know yeah, we can reflect on how the news and even ourselves are thinking about Burma. And if there's any Burmese young people in the event today, I really want to encourage you to think that what is happening in Burma is not normal, and what you are going through is not normal in this modern world, because um, nobody in this modern world deserves to, have their lives flipped upside down and face a lot of persecution and inequality, as much as we are having in our daily lives for currently. So to please recognize that the events and problems in Burma are not normal. They are not average daily life international relations problem. They are serious violations of human rights and violations of equality and freedom and liberty. And in that sense, I hope that um, more areas to aid and assist can be identified. I do not want to dive in so in detail, because I think the research has done a very good job in describing what kind of assistance we need. But for today, my message will be that it is a very big problem in Burma, which is not suitable and relevant to our region and to our age. And I think recognition will be the best way to start. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your explanation entirely. How is it that the security issues have been pretty much hampering a lot of activities which are done by youth? So I highlighted here several things. In regards to specifically the security issues, you've mentioned before the passport persecution and also the lack of internet usage for youth to access their study, even their academical necessities, and many other primary necessities, since threats are everywhere. So that security systems and in order to use internet is also really much hampered. Second of all is that young people and older people in the earlier generation and in the present have different conditions, as deprivation happened in the blink of an eye. And Burma is a social problem, and solutions are still needed for the discussion to be filled in the recent research. Second of all, you also mentioned survival instincts as the main resource or the main tool to keep youth alive and to keep youth going for their advocacy, for their campaigns, for their efforts to voice out their thoughts and opinions on what is currently happening in Burma, and also to be hopeful to come back up, and also to be freed from the deprivation of rights. And the third of all, especially for ASEAN, is the recognition from ASEAN itself and also the international or regional community that incidents happen in Burma is still happening up until this point since the coup started, and definitely are not normal. And this also needs to be verified and absorbed more to the youth themselves directly in Burma. And so you also have mentioned, thank you very much, aid and assistance can also be very much more identified and elaborated. Maybe it is mentioned before briefly in the research presented by Mas Rian before. And in terms of aid and assistance, maybe we can also reflect to what happened actually to the Mocha typhoon, which happened a couple of months ago, where assistance can actually come from UN, even when they highlighted in their media that there is a big need of help to the people of Myanmar, but still the military junta is being denial to the assistance itself. So I thank you very much for your perspective and also your representation to the certain key points of our discussion today and to reflect the research itself. So I will move on to our next speaker, Her Excellency to Her Excellency. Now, Susanna, thank you very much for participating. We are delighted to see and we're delighted to hear more of your reflections on the research itself. Some of the similar questions have also been attached to our youth activists. You may also give your brief or elaborated presentation or discussion points in regards to how ASEAN can be foreseen in this crisis. And also, you may also want to mention, Your Excellency, on what can actually be a certain plan ahead, maybe in 5 years ahead, 1 year ahead, maybe even before the ASEAN chairman is held by Indonesia is over, in responding to the crisis experienced by youth in Myanmar. So the time and floor is yours, Your Excellency.
Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank ASEAN Youth Forum for inviting me to this very important event. So I'm very glad and very honored to be here. So I really encouraged by the effort of the ASEAN youth, the collective effort that you are making, professional inquiry, in professional, research and information gathering on Burma, Myanmar youth situation. So it is very much appreciated on the behalf of the youth of Burma, on the behalf of the people of Myanmar. I really appreciate the ASEAN youth who are involved in this important process. And when I review your report, research report, I really appreciate your, professionalism, like the mechanism of the process of the research are no need to point out. It is very much professional. So I really impressed of your effort. And I really appreciate the last part of hopes and dreams of the young people of Myanmar. So it is really reflect the dream of our young people who are inside Myanmar, who are in the revolution, who are fled country because of the oppression of military junta. So I a little bit can catch up what the young from Burma say, Francis. So he said it is very real situation of our country, the life of our young people. No one is safe for them. Even they are fled from the country, outside of the country, they also are threatened by the the limitation of the passport extension, or the military intelligence following them, and so and so. So yeah, the hopes and dreams of young are very clear. They would like to be in free or prospect society, and limitless, no limit of imagination, invention, and enjoy freedom and innovation. So this is, I think, the hopes and dreams of young people of Myanmar. Actually, I used to be working in I live as a activists, and also women activists and ethnic rights activists. And also I involved in many campaigns and many, freedom, the event and peace event in the country. 2015, I ran the election. I was elected as a member of parliament in upper house, and I serve as a secretary of Women and Children Affairs Committee of Parliament for 5 years. In 2020 election, I was elected as a minister, ethnic affairs minister. But the coup occurred, and I never have a chance to serve my people as a minister. But now I serve as a minister for women, youth, and children. So I'm very proud, and I feel that okay, this is the duty for me that the people of Myanmar would like me to be here. So this is the minister that the very first ministry that we have in Myanmar history. We never have a ministry for women or youth or children. This is the first time that we have. So I really appreciate and also proud to be the first minister for this, for the people of Myanmar, for women, youth, and children. And I agree with in research, I saw the disappointed but hopeful in ASEAN. So so this is a really reflect myself. Sometimes I really disappointed, especially the current situation. And our foreign minister of Thai, he claimed that he met Aung San Suu Kyi, and maybe make up the story. I don't know. So they arrested, and then the military junta arrested and put in the jail, and then they would like to use for their advocacy. So I think this is not fair, and this is not right. But as a member of ASEAN, I still hope on the ASEAN that they can play and they can more rigid and tangible outcome for the for Myanmar by the collective leadership, and also strong resolution and strong action, and point out that the research also point out the failure of ASEAN, and also recommendation for the future, and so and so. So the Indonesia role, it is also very important. This is the chair of ASEAN, and I really appreciate the stand of Indonesia. It is very firm and strong, and the CSO, the Indonesia CSO, very strongly supporting the movement of democracy of Myanmar. And especially the young group, the younger generation, they work together. Indonesia young and Myanmar young people, they work together, and they are doing like with my ministry, the young people, they have the exchange program, webinars, and so and so. So the role of Indonesia as the chair of ASEAN is very important. I hope that the coming leadership can also bring this momentum to give more hope for the people and the young people of Myanmar. And Yes, that the important, you also point out the role of international community donors and NGOs. This is very controversial, you know. Like many Myanmar people, they don't want to hear or we condemn military killing people. We condemn they arrest young people and torture and kill. They are fed up. The people of Myanmar fed up because they really would like to see the tangible action to the military gender, the terrorists. So this is a very good point that you put in your research. Last but not the least, the role of Ministry of Women, Youth and Children. I can't see in your research. Probably maybe good to have the inputs from our ministry. As I mentioned, we are the very first ministry in the history of Myanmar that the first time that we give the people of Myanmar give the place and for the platform for the young people to have their own department and ministry. So if you can, you can include the role of ministry and the role of young people who work with the ministry will be better, I think. So for the second, I would like to highlight the response of our ministry for the young people. So as a government, we have a lot of policy paper, you know, the policy paper on women, the policy paper on the children and youth, even the LGBT policy paper we post in our website, and we use as a government policy, and then we implement our programs and collaboration. So now we are working on the youth rehabilitation policy, because you know now the young people are in the front line. They are very brave, you know. They are the forces for the non-violence movement, and also the main forces for the protection the people of Myanmar from the terrorists. So their role is very important. And along with this revolution, many young people, they lost their body parts, like amputee limbs and eyes, and they lost hearing, something like that. We have a lot of disabled the young people impacted by this revolution. So we would like to have a rehabilitation policy for those young people. So we are working on it. And then I also would like to invite ASEAN young people to work with us, because this is very important. And we have so many consultations, workshops, and webinars and seminars for the young people. Last month, we have the education webinars, 5 days consultation meeting led by the student unions. Now, many university and college in Myanmar closed down because there is no student, or there is no teachers or professor, because most of them are they joined the civil disobedience movement. So no education in Myanmar. So now the student unions, they start up a system, and then we also participate in that 5-day workshop. So under our ministry, we have 5 departments, and Youth Affairs Department is the most active department among us. They have the continuous learning, vocational trainings for the young people, rehabilitation program for the injured young people, supporting political prisoner, legal protection for the political prisoner. You may know that the terrorist military junta, they target the young people and they arrest. Not finished there, they kill the young people in the prison. Recently in the Daewoo prison, they said they moved them to another prison, like the student union member, 30 of them, they moved, but the information lost. So far, we can confirm that 8 of them were killed by the military junta. So the situation is very concerned and very much worrisome. So we follow these cases and then supporting them. And also as far as we can, we provide the legal protection. And we also have the monthly youth webinar on the federal. This is very important because our country endured more than 7 decades of conflicts because of we don't have the justice, and then we don't get what we ask for, the federal union, you know. So the young people, they are very brave talking about it. So you can also follow these webinars to hear about what's the dreams of the young people to build our nation, new nation in the future. And we also supporting non-violence movement of the young people. We closely work with the strike groups and campaign groups who are against the military junta. These strike groups are led by the young people who are like their 20s, the university students. They recently do the strike yesterday in the middle of Yangon. You know, Yangon is security is very tight, but yesterday is the murder day, and they lead the campaign strike because they would like to show we are not normal situation. We are in the urgent situation. So they don't want the world to forget about their struggle. So they moving alongside with the revolution. So the third point, the role of ASEAN. I hope and we hope that we will have more strong and solidarity of ASEAN in democracy building in our region. And like you, ASEAN Youth Forum, I think should have the more collaboration on regional-wise research and policy paper, because we have to move forward with the, you know, not individual member. We have to move as a family, as an ASEAN family. So we should have a collaborative regional wide research and policy papers. And I also would like to encourage the youth exchange program. Like last year, we have the youth exchange program because a group of ASEAN young people, they visit to Mesa, the border town of Burma-Thai border. And then they met with some young people, including our department. So they met with our young people and share the experience and then the future activities. So I hope that APF can work on it in the future. And so the ASEAN should looking in the future more integrated approach like culture, politics, economics, and security, human security. We have to more vigilant and more proactive. Now ASEAN is very worrisome. Actually, we are very excited about our friend Thai for the change, but finally we lost hope because we would like to see the young generation leading the country more democratic with the principle more freedom and more more democracy. We need proactive collaboration to expand the more space for the democracy and freedom in our region. So we are very ready for that. Our ministry is open to work with you, all of you, with the young people. And I hope that our youth department, actually our head of youth department is young age, like it's his 20s. So the young youth group are very active and very innovative. They have lots of programs for the young people. So hope that this is the good point that we can meet, and then in the future we can have more collaboration between us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. And yes, we are definitely honored for not only for your presence, but also for your points in this event. Allow me to share again some of your brief points from your presentation. First, Her Excellency has highlighted the substances and also facts stated in the research and the necessities to put it in for the future advocacies. And also to underline the dream and hopes of the youth of Myanmar during these oppressed times. Her Excellency have also highlighted that, again, no one is safe in Myanmar, especially the youth, although they have fled from the country, even by using several methods, but security options, security reasons are still there intact. Ideally, this youth have endless creations, endless possibilities, endless imaginations, and etc. to achieve their dream. But still, things are very much worrisome, although it has been kept progressing, as mentioned by Her Excellency. And we can see how Her Excellency here is the very first Minister for Women, Youth, and also Children. We hope that we can be more progressive in this, in many programs of the ministry. And also Her Excellency highlighted Indonesia's vital role as the chairman of ASEAN. And it's pretty appreciative alongside with the CSOs from Indonesia and also across the region of ASEAN and youth particularly. And it will still be relevant and important to youth in Myanmar. But again, Myanmar is pretty much fed up with several specific keywords used in maybe press releases, webinars, joint statements and such, with the keyword condemnation, such as we condemned the killings and etc. So practical advocacy and solutions are really much more needed. And we can also conclude from the points highlighted by Her Excellency that there are actually three key points for the next steps for we can also gather together. Is that the first, the role of youth and the ministry, which are clearly involving youth in its programs, will be much better to be more involved in a lot of regional advocacies and many more. And also, youth rehabilitation policy. This is one of the most maybe triggering policies which can be done in the nearing time, since we can see that youth are actually the frontliners from this crisis at the moment. And last but not least, also youth exchange program. This takes me actually a little bit aback.
where actually there is this alliance called the Asia Alliance Against Torture, and now they're currently having the Asia Classroom program, where it's pretty much open for youth across ASEAN, and definitely they will be also expecting several attendances from youth across Myanmar. So we'll be looking forward to that. If I'm not mistaken, the program will be held on August. So thank you very much, Her Excellency, for your points and also several things which are clearly to be more elaborated in our future events. Thank you very much. I think we can move on to our next speaker. So our next speaker is Patrick. Correct me if I'm wrong in your pronunciation in your name, Patrick Pongsathorn. He is the Senior Advocacy Specialist for Fortify Rights. So Patrick, yeah, okay. Maybe I would like to ask several similar things which has been asked to our Myanmar youth activists and also to the previous speaker, Her Excellency Susanna for the Ministry for Women, Children, and also Youth. Same questions, but one different questions, Patrick. First of all, can you maybe share your reflection on the research presented by Mas Rian? Second of all, what can CSOs do, particularly in responding to the youth crisis in Myanmar, whether it is regionally formed or it is CSOs from the international scales as well? And the third of all, you can also maybe give us your perspective on how do you foresee ASEAN's role in involving to the case of the Myanmar crisis itself, especially for the youth. So Patrick, you may have the floor.
Thanks very much, Nadine, and thank you very much to the ASEAN Youth Forum for inviting me to speak to you today. My name is Patrick Pongsathorn. I'm the Senior Advocacy Specialist at Fortify Rights. Fortify Rights is an international human rights group. We've been active in Myanmar for a long time now, I think since 2013. And what we do is we do three main things. We investigate human rights abuses. We engage people in positions of power with solutions, and we strengthen local responses to human rights abuses. So whether that's working with local NGOs, CSOs, human rights defenders, and affected communities. I've read the primer and I've listened to the research description today, and I think it's a really excellent and unique piece of research. And it's particularly important to look at the effect of what's happening in Myanmar on the youth, but also their role within the revolution. What's happening in Myanmar is very much a youth-led revolution, and that must not be forgotten. And this report brings out the factors and elements that are often forgotten or hidden from the predominant narrative about what's going on in Myanmar. So I really congratulate the ASEAN Youth Forum for doing this work. What particularly struck me when reading the report was the testimony from young Myanmar people. It brought out elements that aren't, as I said, aren't often discussed, including the mental health impact of the coup on young people, the impact on their futures in terms of education and employment, and also, you know, the issues of digital security, which seems to be, you know, of real importance to the youth as they conduct much of their life online. ASEAN Youth Forum's research shows the need for diversity and different perspectives in analyzing what's happening in Myanmar. So it's a really great start to what I hope will be a fruitful conversation going forward. On the second question, what can CSOs regionally and globally do? I think first off, they should read this important work, and they should take it and dig further into some of these issues, which are quite under-examined, I would say. Mental health in particular is going to be a chronic problem, I think, regardless of what happens next in Myanmar. It's clear that the whole nation has gone through a traumatic period. So mental health will be an important factor in any response to what's happening in Myanmar. So, you know, and a lot of the other issues that were brought up through this report, including employment and education and online safety, that all of those things should be factored into the projects and programming of organizations that are looking to work in and on Myanmar. The report highlights clearly the needs, the wants, and the desires of young people, and the massive challenges that they're facing. And so I think, again, CSOs should be looking to respond to the evidence that is presented in this research. More generally, I think that, you know, CSOs play a very important role in telling the world what's happening in Myanmar. I think there's still not enough attention to the situation in Myanmar, especially from you know, countries who are really in positions of power to make changes happen. And that's partly because you know, it's maybe a situation that is geographically far from some of those important governments. But at the same time, I think that there is, you know, a willingness to let ASEAN take care of this situation. And I think that's misplaced. I think that's an incorrect analysis of what ASEAN is capable of doing. So this kind of, you know, leads me on to the third question, but I think just to say the voices of young people and of CSOs are so important in the ongoing international discussions. And, you know, we should all in the civil society sector be looking to promote, enhance, and bring those voices into the rooms where decisions are being made. So some key dates coming up for such advocacy are, you know, in September, there will be the ASEAN summit where all of the leaders from the ASEAN countries will gather. And from the last ministerial meeting of ASEAN, it was noted that they would then gather in September to revise the 5-point consensus. And so this is a really good opportunity to make sure that, you know, that important document is it is something that reflects, you know, the demands of Myanmar's youth, and is something that can finally be practically implemented. Another important forum will be the general debate of the UN General Assembly happening, I think, in October this year, when all of the heads of state and government from all of the UN member states will gather in New York to meet and to bring up different topics as part of their general debate. So again, you know, we should be looking to enhance and promote the voices of young people in those discussions. Moving on to the third question, and in my analysis of the international responses to what's happening in Myanmar, as I previously noted, ASEAN's response has failed. The 5-point consensus that was agreed, including with the junta in April 2021, has failed on pretty much all accounts. Peace has not been restored to Myanmar. There hasn't been any inclusive mediation or discussions in any real sense. Humanitarian aid is only just starting to get through, and even then in very small quantities. And the junta, as the UN has recently noted, is blocking life-saving aid, including to the victims of Cyclone Mocha. There has been a visit of the ASEAN special envoys, but the junta has been able to ignore, you know, that envoy's calls, and there is a problem with the fact that envoy changes every single time the ASEAN chair changes, And so we don't have any consistency in the approach to ASEAN's dealing with the junta. So, you know, on all of the accounts, basically, ASEAN has failed in its plan. And, you know, I think that we shouldn't be too hard on ASEAN at the same time because of this failure. I don't think ASEAN was ever going to succeed. Its efforts are necessary, but not sufficient. ASEAN doesn't have the political will or the institutions necessary to deal with a crisis of this magnitude, and requires the support and you know, the political firepower of the international community. And when a situation as we are seeing in Myanmar occurs, then this should be handled primarily by the UN Security Council. Unfortunately, what we have in the UN Security Council is a deadlock with Russia and China on one side and the other P5 members on the other. And so we've only managed to have one non-binding resolution passed since the start of the crisis in Myanmar, Resolution 2669, which, as I said, is under Chapter 6, so it's non-binding, so it has very little impact on the ground. So what we're calling for is a binding resolution to be tabled by the UK, who is the pen holder on Myanmar at the Security Council. And we know that Russia and China are likely to veto a resolution, especially one that is binding. But this wouldn't be the end of the conversation. And you know, the UK and other governments have argued that if a Security Council resolution is vetoed, then the junta would feel empowered. I don't think that the junta is looking to the Security Council to feel empowered. I think it feels empowered regardless. It's empowered because of the years of impunity that it's enjoyed for the countless human rights abuses and even genocide that it's committed against its own people. So a Security Council resolution being vetoed would not embolden the military any more than it's already emboldened. But instead it would start a global conversation about an arms embargo, about targeted sanctions, about a Security Council, a ICC referral to of the individuals involved in these crimes. And that conversation coming from the Security Council could then continue in the General Assembly, and would actually have to be continued in the General Assembly due to a resolution that was passed by Liechtenstein a couple of years ago now. And then a global coalition could be formed to work with ASEAN to, you know, come down hard on the junta and make sure that these crimes are ended and accountability is sought. So I think that's the vision that I would like to share with you today. A lot of work ahead, obviously, but this research, as I said, from ASEAN Youth Forum is very important. It brings out some really interesting issues and gives us all a lot of food for thought. So thanks very much for inviting me today.
Thank you very much, Patrick, for your visions. And yes, a lot of homeworks ahead to be done by a lot of stakeholders involved in this crisis. Yes, so the importance to look into youth-led revolutions and to see the testimony which are not often discussed, especially when it comes to the highlight of mental health issues, employment, and also education is very much important for us to discuss further in our advocacy strategies. You know, I've also mentioned how CSO should read this research, this primary research beforehand, before going on to several continuous strategies ahead, and to take it as another starting point for their strategies, as mentioned before, such as how to respond to the mental health issues, and the progress on how to solve employment and dropouts of education sectors. Because if we see through several media's exposures, security sectors are pretty much more highlighted more than we can also highlight other critical issues. And also there is a misplaced to entirely put ASEAN as a core actor to solve Myanmar crisis. And therefore we can also see on how specific regional and international momentums can be used for strategies for CSOs, academics, and many more stakeholders included, such as on September, we have the ASEAN Summit. We can look into that together, and also the UNGA general debate. And last but not least, you have also mentioned how ASEAN's response has failed to all accounts, no inclusive meetings, the junta blocking assistance, no consistency in the special envoy, which are changing from time to time, every time we change our chairmanship. So efforts are necessary, but not sufficient, and therefore global coalition is very, very much needed. So yes, thank you very much for your points, Patrick, on this. And I think we can just move on to our next session, which is the question and answer session. So we are very much open for those who are seeing this from Zoom or YouTube. If you have any questions for our speakers or our researcher, you may have the floor. So if anyone have any questions or maybe feedback, or maybe some of you are still very much intact to the point where maybe ASEAN can just do more, but there are maybe several loopholes that aren't done because they're pulling on too much ties. On the other hand, they're pulling on how Myanmar should be still be a part of the membership of ASEAN, but still the junta maybe events or incidents still kept happening. So this is a very tight group for the ASEAN to hold. Or maybe some of you might also want to ask methodologies of the research. Maybe what can be progressed further after the primary research to the researcher himself. You may have the floor. Or maybe if our panelists would like to ask either from our speaker to the researcher, or maybe from the researcher to the speaker, you may also have the floor. Okay, I'm not seeing any raised hands. Or maybe if our panelists would like to ask. Or maybe I could just start off with a burning question, actually. I would like to ask to our speakers, 3 speakers who have given their insights and inputs. During this primary research, you may have seen some of the elaborated cases starting from the 2021 Coup incident up until this moment, where several data also updated what were the certain incidents could be highlighted and could also be a triggering point for us to advocate more. But maybe I want to know further from our speakers if there are maybe certain more things to be highlighted or included in the next step of the research. Maybe I would like to ask first from our youth activists, if there are maybe certain additional points to be added to the research. Hello.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. Yes, I think one good addition would be around the identity, the self-perceived identity, and also the development of the identity of the young people who have fled to abroad. Because as I've said before, this is not the first time we have seen such a phenomenon that, you know, people left the country from oppression in Burma. And but this time particularly is, I think it's more it's a very tricky situation to describe, because I think what last time in our parents' generation is more of like a one-way thing. You know, like people just outright, you know, cut the ties and leave the country. Mostly people who have political backgrounds and stuff. But this time, young people are living on the grounds of not just asylum and politics, but also living because of education, and also we have migrant worker situation, not just migrant worker situation of before, but also added by the young people also. So it will be a very interesting direction to see how these all diverse young people perceive their own identity and the whole situation itself. Because we have a lot of, even for the education purposes, a lot of mix of people are going abroad. And I think I mentioned it in the research. Even for my current resident university, we have a lot of different backgrounds, like some from the military families, and some from the very like me, very civilian, very middle class, very normal families, and some very active. And what is interesting is that we are put in the same university, and so of course, before we can guess that there will be a lot of conflict. But first, the very interesting question is that because we become like a representation of Burma in this university community, or in this community of where we are, the country. So we are asked, right, from our peers of that host country or the host university, like, what is like Burma, like who are we, like who are Burmese, or we have like so now in this community I'm living, we have ethnic people like Karen and Chin and Kachin, and then most of us are like mainland Burmese, and then we have this conflict, like whenever we are asked to present our culture, like which culture we're going to present. And if we are presenting let's say mostly Burmese, when we present our Burmese culture, is it like most of the time it will be in clash of the ethnic communities, like the discussions or the beliefs we have. So I think it has been, for me in this community, has been a very, very rocky journey of sharing our culture. Especially I have to get our facts right, and we have a lot of propagandas taught in our basic education in Burma. So my mainland Burmese friends will bring those propagandas all the way to the host community we're having right now, and sometimes even advertising military propaganda at their own expense. They think it's true. So for my part, I've tried to tackle that as well. But yeah, I think it will be a very interesting direction, because it's just so different everywhere. In US is another case. We have communities now, strong communities now in Thailand, in Japan, in Korea, in China. So yeah, I think that would be a really interesting way to go forward for the research. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I see there is a raising hand. Yes, please. From Naula side.
Yes, I would like to know along the, I saw your methodology that you have the focus group discussion and also literature review and so and so. I also would like to know whether you have a chance to talk with the young people in the revolution, like the strike group, and also the PDF, People Defense Force, because this revolution led by youth. So their voice also very important. Yeah. And the second point that I really appreciate, Patrick, that your comments and your review on the research, and then you also mentioned that the national traumatized. It is very true, not only 1 or 2 person, the whole nation traumatized by the military coup. I forgot to mention in my presentation that our youth department, they have the online counseling service we call Dai Mien Po. Dai Mien Po in English, it is equal to consultant. So Dai Mien Po channel, we have the Telegram channel and also, you know, Signal that supporting the counseling service to the young people and their families. So it is like 30 to 40 per month cases that they serve by the Dai Mien Po channel. On the other hand, we also have Nyata Lanyo. This is a legal protection, legal consultation for the young political prisoner. So we also have this kind of service done by the youth department. This is that I would like to add for my presentation. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Maybe if there are certain suggestions or maybe points to then be referred to Her Excellency's points. So the first one is regarding the methodology. To Mas Rian, if you would like to echo this further. The second one regarding the legal protection and also consultation to Patrick. So maybe we can refer this to Mas Rian first to echo it beforehand.
Yeah, thank you, Your Excellency, for your question. Unfortunately, we did not interview the youth revolution groups due to limited access to informants and also time constraints and also funding resources as well. Most of the participants that were selected for this research based on the limited network that the ASEAN Youth Forum have. And we hope that in the future that we can build a wider network with various youth groups in Myanmar, especially with the youth revolution groups. So that will be maybe a recommendation for the next study. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Okay, maybe I can pass the microphone to Patrick to respond.
Yeah, sure. Could you just remind me the question?
Okay, I just would like to appreciate your pointing out that the national traumatized, it's happened in Myanmar people, especially the young generation. And then I also would like to add that in the youth program we have the counseling service, the Dai Mien Po counseling service. And also, it is a legal service that we provide service for the people of Myanmar. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Your Excellency. That's a really practical response from the National Unity Government. It's really excellent work. I think, you know, on the mental health front, we've done a lot of research particularly within the Rohingya community, looking at this issue. We'll have a forthcoming report actually, again, looking at the mental health impact of the genocide on the Rohingya. We already have one report called The Torture in My Mind that I would recommend participants to take a look at. We worked with a big group of Rohingya survey leaders, for want of a better word, who went out into the Rohingya refugee camps and conducted mental health surveys, looking at issues to do with post-traumatic stress and others related to their experiences during the 2017 genocidal attacks. So that might be, you know, there might be a source of inspiration in that report. But I think that, you know, now in this current context, the Myanmar people are facing a obviously much wider scale mental health crisis. And, you know, that's a combination of both the trauma, the direct trauma of the military's ongoing systematic repression, but it's also, you know, as your report points out, the fact that the future of young people is being stolen. Myanmar is at risk of a lost generation. Not only was there COVID, which disrupted education and employment, then the coup, and now the civil war and repression that's happening. So Myanmar really is at risk of losing an entire generation. And I've worked in other contexts where whole populations have gone through this kind of crisis before, and I've seen the impact that mental health can have on not only the generation that went through that traumatic incident, but also future generations. It really does have a negative impact on a whole country's development. It can lead to situations of increased levels of domestic violence, decreased levels of educational attainment, and then literal impact on a country's GDP. So the issue of mental health is so important. Its importance can't be overstated, and I think that this report does really good work at bringing out that issue. But I would encourage AYF and others to look into that even further, to look at all of the contributing factors into the mental health crisis that is happening, particularly within the Myanmar youth, and elaborate on that even further.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Patrick, for your response. And I think this might be the last question for the discussion today. So there's a question from Ananta Setiawan. I can just read the question aloud. I would like to ask about how young people in Myanmar view the humanitarian aid that are carried out by the AHA Center or other international bodies or organizations amidst its many shortcomings. Can this humanitarian assistance answer the needs of young people in Myanmar in the context of humanitarian action? What might be missed, or can support the advocacy work of the youth community in Myanmar in the future? Maybe I can pass this question to Her Excellency, and also for the youth activist representative, if you also would like to add several statements, you may. Her Excellency. Hello?
Yes, yeah.
Is my voice audible?
Yeah. So thank you for the question. So I think it is a good question. To be honest, the young people of Myanmar, they really fed up with ASEAN and AHA Center, that they tend to collaborate with SAC, the military junta, because we keep on advocate them, working with the youth group or working with the local CSO for the humanitarian aids, but they hardly listen. They just meet with Naypyidaw and also the generals, and then they carry out, but their mission is not successful, I think, because of the conflict and the area that controlled by NUG. They should work with NUG and its humanitarian aids ministry, but I don't know their justification. They just visit to Naypyidaw and then working closely with the general. It lost the trust of Myanmar people, and also lost credibility of working for Myanmar, I think. So I would like to recommend that you have the ground survey, and we have so many talented and capable local CSO. Now they are doing the general service for the community, like Magwe and Zagai. The youth group are very active. They carry out like non-violence movement, like strike in the evening, on the nighttime. They give the political political review to the community, and then humanitarian aids for the women and children and the community. They are very effective, you know. So working with local context and situation is maybe more effective. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. May I please maybe ask the youth representative to add several things in regards to this question?
I would agree with the minister. It is ASEAN's or the any relevant bodies dealing with the SAC, which is the biggest obstacle for the aids to be very efficient. I had a very first-hand experience with that. Is that when AYF hosted a program with, I think, with the Intergovernmental Human Rights Commission, I think ASEAN, ICHA. So I had the chance to meet with two representatives from I think one from Indonesia and one from Thailand, and I think it was the very earliest days of the coup, and so we asked them like how are the aids, or like what is stopping them to deliver the aids and so on, and I think this was like way before the cyclone or anything, right? This was just the beginning of the coup, and they said, oh, we have all the aids ready by the border at our warehouses in Thailand. It's just the government, right, the so-called the government SAC is not giving us the permission. So this is like the thing that needs to be changed. Like I think that the ASEAN or its bodies should grow out of this mindset that the aids need to be delivered, or this by someone's permission. Or I do not quite understand why realpolitik is considered this much when the need for the aid is just growing in very, very rapid rate. And adding to this point is that the same thing, I think, in the very similar I think same time conversation with them, and I asked like how's the aid mechanism going and what is stopping them, and mostly is the junta representative in the ICHA meeting, because ASEAN works on consensus, and the junta has a seat in the ICHA, and the junta representative can keep blocking the aid, or keep interrupting us, or make the aid plan completely irrelevant from the original plan that the ICHA had thought. So this is actually a scenario, a regular scenario in most of the ASEAN bodies. And this is actually very disappointing. And in the light of the cyclone and growing need, I think ASEAN needs to grow out of this mindset and starts to be consistent with their political approach, which is to have a empty seat in the in the political summits. But you can see that in the defense and in the other sectors, the junta always still have a seat in the ASEAN discussions, and it is not very helpful, ideal at all. I think the ASEAN should start considering. So first thing ASEAN should do is to start considering the relevance of the junta representative in ASEAN discussions, and if they really want to maintain that realpolitik, that realism, I think NUG and other effective CSOs and other neutral CSOs on resource organizations, resource persons should also be involved in the discussion. Of course, the ideal scenario for the start would be the complete removal of junta in the discussions. It is very biased and inconsistent with ASEAN stance. Yes, thank you.
Yes, of course, that is very much conclusive of what we have discussed so far, including on how Junta is still very much involved in our regional forums in ASEAN for the past couple of months since Indonesia's chairmanship. Thank you very much for all of our speakers, including our researcher and also the ASEAN Youth Forum representative, for all of your contribution in this discussion. So allow me to conclude several points for our today's event. First is, it is to no debate that youth have a vital role each and every day, including their strives in the Myanmar crisis. Therefore, more practical action steps are entirely needed to be implemented further and as soon as we can by stakeholders in solidarity with the issue. And also, the recognition are needed for a bigger scale of stakeholders for the present updates for the crisis. And second of all, also, the biggest or more bigger or stronger engagements are needed by stakeholders in solidarity, such as the involvement of the Ministry of Youth and Women and Children in strategic advocacy programs, and to also be more proactive for program creation and also management. And the third of all is also a more, we should have more binding resolution, which is strongly needed as ASEAN have failed to implement the 5-point consensus entirely and the UN resolution 2669 as well. And so I would like to again thank you very much, and we hope that this engagement won't stop here as we have disseminated our research. Furthermore, we would like to have more participation, more engagement further on. And last but not least from me, please feel free to fill in the evaluation form, which is shared through our screen. Again, thank you very much. I'm Nadine Sherani as the moderator, closing on today's event. Thank you very much, everyone who's involved.
Thank you.
You.
Thank you. Thank you very much.